Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hey. Welcome back to the podcast. I am feeling spicy this afternoon, and I'm so excited to record this episode about how controlling of a person I am, or rather, how controlling of a person I used to be. Not to say that I don't have those tendencies still alive in me, but I have so much more discernment and tools around them, and I am so much more at peace in my relationship ever since I let go of control. The reason I'm feeling spicy today is because I just released a TikTok yesterday, which was sitting in my drafts, drafts, a little over a month ago. And I had completely forgotten about it until I went onto TikTok yesterday and saw it and thought, what the heck? And I'll talk about it today and what has inspired this podcast. So in today's episode, I'd love to share with you 10 ways to control your partner. And this is kind of a sarcastic title. What I really mean is 10 ways I used to control my partner. And I didn't even realize that these were controlling because I used to think of a lot of these things as helpful. But the truth is my partner, my now husband, Preston, would actually interpret these behaviors that I thought were helpful. He would actually interpret as me questioning his logic, questioning his thought process, confusing him, and offering unsolicited input. It took me a long time to realize that my partner was not wired the same way I was. And also, I noticed that he would feel the same way that I would feel if people offered me unsolicited advice about my business. There were some things I do in my business that are very intentional. There's a very real reason I do things the way I do things. And while I am open to feedback in terms of the impact of how I do things, it can be unsolicited when people say, I think you should do this, or I think you should do this, when they really haven't stepped in my shoes and understood what it's like to run this business. And in a way, when I'm in my business, I'm in my masculine energy and I have a logical way of running things. But at home, I don't like to be the decision maker. So I kind of let my husband be the decision maker because after work, I am tired of making decisions. So I let him do that. But if I never let him make decisions because I'm constantly offering unsolicited feedback, it's disrespectful. So in the same way, when someone offers me unsolicited feedback, I imagine someday when I'm a parent, people are going to offer me unsolicited feedback all the time. And just like they're going to think they're being helpful, I'm going to perceive it as being disrespectful of my thought process and my reasoning for what I choose. So I have to extend that same logic to my partner. If I want him to be the decision maker so that I can relax, I need to respect his decision making. Now, a big discernment here, and I saw this on my TikTok, and the vast response of, unfortunately, negative comments were that people are associating letting go of control with tolerating disrespect. And that is not true. Those are two different things. So I'm going to talk about that today. When I made the decision to trust my partner's leadership more and leave room for him to step up, I realized that I actually had very little to say, because in the past, I didn't realize just how the majority of our conversations were me focusing on how my partner could change. He could change his appearance. He could change how he spends his time and energy. All this, I was trying to be helpful, but in hindsight, it was really eroding our intimacy. Side note, I really want to emphasize that I really appreciate your feedback. I don't know what it is about this audience, but you guys are awesome. I just looked at the podcast reviews recently, and someone left like a 5-star review and said, you're doing great work, but something about your microphone is bothering me. And I get it. I use a Blue Yeti. It's made for ASMR. I know I already have an ASMR-y voice. I apologize. I'm on it. I'll probably get a new microphone for Christmas. I am not a microphone expert, so if any of you out there are podcast hosts or microphone experts, I would love to know what microphone you recommend, because you're right, this one is really sensitive. So I appreciate those of you who have the nuanced way of looking at life and the ability to appreciate my content while also letting me know what would make it a better experience for you. I appreciate the 5-star reviews that say, please change your mic. I love that. I love that someone can give a 5-star review and say, can you change this one thing? Yes, I would love to change this one thing. Thank you for telling me, whoever that was. I appreciate you. I'm on it. It's probably going to be a few months. I hope your ears can tolerate this. Sorry, I hope I didn't bother you when I did that. This ASMR microphone. Okay, I'm on it. I see you. And I love feedback like that. So don't be afraid to let me know how I can make your experience as a listener better. That's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is being controlling when we're shaming someone and telling them how they should be. I hope you can feel the difference between saying, here's what I need versus here's what you need to do. That is the difference between being respectful and being controlling. When we're being respectful, we're owning our own needs, we're stating what our boundaries are, but when we're being controlling, we're trying to get the other person to change. So that is kind of the gist of it. You could just stop listening now, and that would be enough if you really practice that. So here are 10 ways I use to control my partner. Number 1 is control their bedtime or waking time. About a month ago, I had a retreat to host. You might have heard me talking about the podcast. It was all about the inner relationship. And I was going up into the mountains from Vienna into the mountains. We were going to arrive about a week before the retreat started. I was going to spend some time with my teacher. We were going to set some intentions for the retreat. And also I was just going to spend some time getting grounded. I like to arrive to retreat centers early to get grounded when I am hosting. So on the day that we're supposed to leave, we're supposed to catch a train at 11 a.m. And we need to leave the house by 10:40 a.m. Now, I woke up at 8:30 to give myself 2 hours. Now, at 9:40, an hour before we're supposed to leave, I notice my husband is still asleep. And I have been practicing not being controlling, so I felt a little bit of anxiety about waking him up. I felt like I should wake him up. But at the same time, I didn't want to be controlling and control his bedtime and waking time, because it kind of erodes intimacy. Even though my partner would get up if I told him to, for me it's so much more pleasurable to leave space for him to wake up in his own time and of his own free will be ready, rather than me telling him, you need to get ready, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Because in the past, I did used to nag him about his waking time. I was afraid that if he didn't wake up on time, he would be late for work, his own work. And indeed, sometimes he would be late to his own job. And so I wanted to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. And so the way I did that was by trying to be quote unquote helpful. And the problem is, although I did prevent the consequences because he did drag his feet to go to work on time, this is for his family business way back in the day, it was very exhausting having to be his mother, and he never got to experience the consequences of being late to work. And he resented me for being his mother. I resented him for putting me in the position to be his mother, and he never learned the consequences. And in order to really experience the relationship you desire where you don't have to mother your partner, you need to leave room for them to fall flat on their face. And a lot of people are going to think that's harsh, and maybe it is, but to the micromanagers in the relationship, it's not harsh. It's actually loving. It's loving to leave space for your partner to grow up if they haven't already. So anyway, at 9:40, I'm thinking, I feel like he should wake up because I'm thinking of all the things that I think he needs to do. But I'm practicing surrendering. I'm practicing not being in control. I'm trusting that my husband knows what time we have to leave. He knows we have to leave at 10:40. I'm trusting he's got an alarm or an internal clock or something, and I decide to go out of the apartment and get breakfast. And I did that and had a really nice breakfast, and I just chose to tolerate my anxiety for an hour and hope that when I got home, he'd be ready to leave. Sure enough, I get home, he's ready to leave, he's just finishing up breakfast that he cooked for himself. Now, when I shared this story on TikTok, I got flooded with comments saying, or we could not mommy your partner and let them sleep in. And I'm thinking, man, you really can't win. If you wake them up, you're mommying them. If you don't wake them up, you're mommying them. So it's a lose-lose for me. There's no middle ground. A lot of people were saying, why doesn't he make a video about being more respectful and waking up on time? And the point I think most people missed in that video was the fact that my partner, my husband, did follow through. He did not disappoint me. And actually, he very rarely does because he cherishes that trust that I hold in him. I'm not sure it has occurred to these people that it takes my husband 20 minutes to get ready, and it takes me 2 hours, maybe even more. And why do I need to make sure that he wakes up on time to do the things that I think he should do when that might not actually be on his timeline? Now, to be fair, one of the things I had to get comfortable with, and this is something I shared in the TikTok as well, is, okay, well, what if he didn't wake up and I missed my train? Well, you have to feel into the moment, because on this particular day, the stakes were not that high. It was not the day of the retreat. It was a week before. I was getting there to relax. So if for whatever reason I decided in the name of not being controlling to let my husband sleep and he slept in and we missed the train, there is a possibility that I could just leave without him. At that point, I think I'd wake him up. But the other option is there's a train 2 hours later. If we miss it, it's not that big of a deal. And my husband would feel so bad if he overslept that he would probably never do that again. He would probably set an alarm. And I've noticed this to be true. When I at first decided to stop being controlling and stop micromanaging his logic of how he spends his time and energy and money, by the way, at first there were real disappointments. At first he fell flat on his face, and it's something that you need to get comfortable with. It's I don't like to use a parenting analogy, because in the same way that we need children to fall flat on their face sometimes, your partner has an inner child just like you do. And there's let me tell you, there's areas inside of me that have not grown up, and there's areas inside of my partner that have not grown up. Yes, we're mostly fully grown adults, but sometimes our inner child comes out, and it can be helpful when your partner's inner child comes out if you have the capacity to kind of parent them in a loving way. When you enter a partnership with someone, you're entering partnership not just with them, but with their wounding and with their inner child. And so if someone has a severe amount of wounding and they're severely stuck in being a childlike character, then that's one thing. But for the most part, at least for me, over the years, my partner has just grown up more and more and more and more, and it's so beautiful to see. So the thing I had to be comfortable with was the possibility of missing the train, which on that particular day, in that particular context, would have been okay with me, because I know that my husband would feel so bad about it, and he knows I don't want to control him. He knows I much prefer him to wake up and come to me of his own free will than me mommying him into it. So because that's what I want, I leave space for that. That means that sometimes I have to tolerate my anxiety and hope and trust that he's going to follow through. And as I've been practicing this more and more and more over time, especially over the last year, the more often my partner follows through and the less often he disappoints me. So I understand how terrifying of an idea this is, but it's also super, super rewarding. So I wanted to share that TikTok story because it was only like a minute and 20 seconds long. And so much context gets lost. In order to really, live, you need to have a certain level of discernment. If I had a flight to catch, I'd probably wake him up. And I'd probably wake him up maybe 20 minutes before, which is probably when he would have woken up anyway. I don't know. That's not necessarily true. I hope you get my drift. It requires a certain degree of mindfulness and discernment. So on this particular context, it wasn't that big of a deal if we missed the train. Yeah, there's also the possibility I could leave without him, but to me, that's not really what I wanted. So if you want, you can go look at my TikTok and see the debacle that happened. So number one way to control your partner is to control their bedtime or waking time. Number two, police their choice of clothing and their food, or really just any kind of policing. I used to think, especially when I was studying at the School for Integrative Nutrition, or the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, I was so turned on and inspired and dogmatic, should I say, about nutrition. Everywhere I looked, I saw people who were not making healthy choices, and I wanted to be helpful. So I told people what they should eat, including my husband. And it took me a while to realize that people know what they should be doing, and they still want to have autonomy. And it did not register to me that telling my partner what he should eat and what he should wear was not landing well, and that he did not find it helpful in the same way that I don't find it helpful when people are policing my diet. So the only person I have control over is me. Now, that doesn't mean I can't comment on what he wears. What I do is if my husband is wearing something that I really like, I will say, "Ooh, you look really good in that. I love that shirt on you." But if he decides to wear Crocs to a social gathering, the worst thing that could happen is someone in our social gathering maybe makes fun of his Crocs, or they have a thought about his Crocs and they decide that he's not professional. And you know what? I really don't care, because Crocs say nothing about my man's character. And I literally don't give a shit what you think about my husband's Crocs. Not that he wears Crocs anymore, but he used to. And I wish that I just didn't give a fuck, because it doesn't fucking matter. People make assumptions that are not accurate about a person's character. So I used to police his clothing because I thought I was worried of how people would judge him, aka how people would judge me for being with him. And to that, I just say, if I have people that are judging my husband or me based on his clothing, that's a miserable way to live. And I feel sorry for them. That's the truth, because we never know where someone's coming from. Maybe my husband's had a really rough day, and the last thing he needs is to be focusing on his fashion when he's really stressed out. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. And I've just noticed that extending grace to your partner goes so much further than policing. And in the beginning, when we would go out, I had to bite my tongue in an attempt to be respectful. Number 3, here's another way to control your partner. When you're out having fun, coach them. Be a personal development coach for your partner. Here's an example. My husband and I do Argentine tango. He just started a year ago. I started 6 years ago. And there are these social events called milongas. And you go to class to learn the techniques, and then you go to what's called a practica to practice your techniques. And then at the milonga, you let go of everything and you just have fun, and you trust that the techniques that you really know will come out. What I used to do is at the milonga, the place where you're supposed to have fun and just let go and enjoy being in a social setting, we would be in a close embrace, and I would be whispering in his ear what he should do. And he wasn't able to let go and have fun. And I always was perplexed that he would be so irritated with me. It never occurred to me that maybe he's here to have fun, and if he wanted to be coached, he could have gone to class. So, I am not his coach. So when we're at a milonga now, I focus on having fun and I keep my mouth shut, Number 4, and this one is a more sneaky way. If you want to control your partner, undo what they do and redo it the way that you think they should do it. This one is really difficult. And I don't expect people to change this right away. But let's say that your partner loaded the dishwasher and you decided that they loaded it wrong, and so you redid all of their effort. You think they don't see that? You're basically sending the message that they did it wrong and that what they did didn't matter. Another way I wish I could say I don't do this anymore, but I literally did it yesterday. My partner washed the blender wrong, and I brought the blender back to him and pointed at the gunk on the bottom of the blade. And I am torn between this because on the one hand, I'm like, dude, if you don't wash this, it's going to suck for the next person that's using it, or someone's not going to see it. And when you blend the smoothie, it's gunk is going to be in there. And to that, I say, do you want to be in control or do you want to be connected? This is something I ask my clients all the time. And I think there are ways to communicate in a playful way that still honor your partner's autonomy, that still offers them grace, because God knows sometimes I leave my socks on the floor and make messes and inconvenience everyone. So I think there's a way to let your partner know what you want and appreciate them for when they do it right without sending them the message that they've done something wrong. And I'll be the first to say that I still mess this up. Number 5, how to control your partner. Send your partner videos of coaches that clearly know how to love you better than they do. So I used to follow all these men's coaches that were clearly very masculine and doing everything right and understood women very well. And these men were talking about what the problem with men today and what men should be doing. And I would send this video to my husband. I cringe thinking about just how incredibly disrespectful that is. If the tables were reversed, I would be furious if my man sent me a video about how a woman should act. Ouch. So there came a time when, and also the thing that always pissed me off about videos of that men's coaches do is for whatever reason, the algorithm never sends it to men, do they? They send it to women who are already indignant, and then the women use it as a justification to stay in their righteous indignation. So it's getting to the wrong audience. The women are using it to weaponize against their own men or masculine beings in partnership. And it's very divisive. It's not creating the intimacy that you want. There came a point where I had to unfollow all the men's coaches because I was using it in a weaponizing way. I was not using it to further intimacy. I trust that if my man wants to know how to relate to a woman better, he can utilize my feedback. He can ask me questions. He can talk to his guy friends. He can read a book. But as long as I'm telling him what he should be doing, I don't know. I know how I'm wired. I don't like being told what to do. So I trust that my husband doesn't like being told what to do either. And I leave room for him to see when there's a problem and to act on it. And, do I get disappointed sometimes? Of course. And this is why I say you need to leave room for disappointment in your relationship. Disappointment's a part of life. So you can't the way I see it is if you really clean up your side of the street and you really, really stop controlling and you start being respectful in your relationship's going to either become worse because your partner's going to take advantage of that and treat you like shit, and it'll become very obvious that this is not going to work, or your partner's going to almost feel humbled and guilty when they treat you like shit, and they're going to clean up their act within a matter of weeks. This has been my experience. Number 6, how to control your partner. I used to pay attention to interactions between my husband and his mother, and I would hear his mother tell him that she wanted him to do something, and I would make sure that he did that thing. So I would remind him to do things I heard his mother tell him to do, because for whatever reason, I registered that in order to be on the good side of his mom, I wanted her to think that I was a good wife. And so I would make sure that he wasn't slacking off around me. And, It's really twisted. Nowadays, I trust that if my partner decides to not do what his mother told him to do, that his mother is a grown adult and can remind him herself, or there will be consequences to him not doing the thing that his mother told him to do. It is not about me. That was an interaction between his mother and him. I am not part of that. I get to conserve my energy and my peace. How to control your partner. Number 7. I have done this. Tell your partner how they should talk to their friends and how to set boundaries when their friends are rude to them. I've noticed this. My husband one time came to me and was venting about a friend of his who he'd perceived as disrespectful. And I said, you should tell him off. You should set a boundary. You should tell him what you think. And I was really perplexed when he resisted. And I couldn't understand, because if I were in that situation, I thought that I would set a boundary. So when he wasn't, I was like, man, maybe, I had this thought like, maybe he's not man enough to set a boundary. But I realized in hindsight that the conversation that I was thinking that he should have was not worth the effort for him, considering all the other shit he had going on in his life. The confrontation would expend more energy than it was worth to him. And by telling him how he should interact with his friends, I was sending him the message that I didn't trust his judgment. And that's disrespectful. I wouldn't like someone telling me how I should behave in my friendships. If I wanted to, maybe instead of, those friends being Preston's friends, maybe those people should be my friends. Like, instead of focusing on how your partner interacts with people, focus on how you're interacting with people. This one's a tricky one. Number 8, how to control your partner. When they're cooking, monitor their cooking, because you are clearly their cooking coach, and if you were not living with them, they would burn the house down, right? Your partner, if you're listening to this, is likely a grown adult who is capable of cooking, and probably was cooking before you were dating, and they were probably executing tasks before you came into the picture, and that has not changed now that you've entered the picture. So if your partner is baking something and it's burning, I might go as far to say, something smells weird, but I won't say you should do this. So again, I mentioned this in the beginning. I found it helpful to just share my experience without telling someone what they should be doing. So there's a difference between saying, what's that smell, versus, babe, your water's boiling, or you're burning your thing, or you need to go do this. I hope that you guys can feel that discernment. It's much more respectful to just pay attention to how this is actually impacting you and share that. Honey, I feel scared. I'm imagining this happening, etc. When my partner decides to boil water to make eggs, if the water's been boiling for 20 minutes, I continue to let it boil. I don't expect everyone to take this extreme of an approach. I have to tolerate an enormous amount of anxiety in the short term. But in the long run, my husband realizes he's let the water boil for 45 minutes and now the water's all boiled off. And maybe there's a ruined pot now. But you know what? That ruined pot, he learned something from it, much more than he would have learned from me if I were to tell him what he should do. And I much prefer my partner receiving a life lesson than a criticism from me, because the life lessons actually stick. When he hears it from me, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, because he never actually experienced the consequence. So it sounds weird to say, but letting your partner experience life and the consequences of their own actions, it actually really benefits the relationship, because they're going to start to learn and step it up. And maybe their mom didn't teach them certain things, and you don't have to fill that space. You really don't. Number 9. Try to get your partner to open up and have a deep conversation against their will. This one does not seem like it's controlling, but in my opinion, it is, because you're still showing up with an agenda of how you think your partner should be acting. I used to have a really difficult relationship with silence. And what I used to do is try to ask these aggressively deep questions. I used to tell my partner, I don't think we're having deep enough conversations. I don't feel seen. I don't feel understood. And even though like this is what a lot of couples counselors would have told me to do, to tell my partner, I don't feel seen, I don't feel understood, it actually didn't make him feel any safer. If anything, it made him feel more defensive because in his mind, he was doing a lot. He was there. He might not know exactly how to respond, maybe because, I'm looking for a response that typically comes from my girlfriends, but I'm asking it from a man who's just wired differently. And so I know better than to go to my partner and vent and expect him to respond with a ton of validation, because the way that he communicates is to solve my problem. So if I really want to vent, I generally pose it as a problem, which is, oh man, I have so much on my mind. I would just love to have an ear. Are you available? Right? See how I've positioned it as a problem for him to fix, because I know that that's how he's wired. He's wired to want to support me through action, as opposed to just coming to him and saying, I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen, because that doesn't actually tell him what he should do. There's a lot more nuances to this. I can't cover it all right now, partially because I didn't type out the nuances of this, and I do generally have my own bullet points. But I have found that when I am more comfortable with silence, I treasure it, I revere it, I appreciate silence. I find so much peace in silence. And ironically, when I don't need to drag a deep conversation out of my partner, he feels a sense of safety, and that actually opens him up and makes him more introspective. And this is what generally opens up for a deep conversation. It's a bit of a paradox, as so many paradoxes exist in relationship. This is one of them, where when you stop needing the deep conversation to happen and you just relax, that creates so much safety, that creates fertile ground for depth. And along that same note, number 10 of how to control your partner, these are the spiritual controlling tendencies. Try to get them to be more present with you. There's so many ways that I used to do this. One of them is during lovemaking, I would bore into my husband's eyes, like trying to be a demonstration of what presence would look like. And all it did was just it was really awkward and uncomfortable for him. And he would look away being like, the fuck, woman, what are you doing? Why are you staring at me with these big eyes? Like, I thought I was being spiritual, but it was just a performance of what I thought presence was. And I clearly had an agenda, and my husband clearly felt it. And so now, I look at him, but if he doesn't respond in this way I have in mind, I let it go. And another thing I would do is if my partner was, scrolling on his phone before bed and I was reading The Power of Now, I had in my mind that my husband is not spiritual or present or awake enough. So I need to awaken him. That's my job, even though that is an exhausting job to choose. And what I would do is I would read passages to him, trying to get him to get it. The other thing I would do is try and get him to go to a yoga class, not because I wanted to spend time together, but because I perceived that he was not at an optimal level of consciousness. And I was hoping that if he meditated enough or did more yoga, that he would finally wake up. This also goes along the lines of controlling what your partner takes, what vitamins they take, what supplements they take. Whether they're stretching. I used to get on my partner's case for not stretching enough because he just loved to lift weights. Let him pull a muscle. Let him experience what it's like to not stretch or not take care of your body. That's not my job. So it's important to, at some point, make it abundantly, lovingly clear that you are not a backup plan for your partner. There are some contexts where it may be lovingly helpful to wake your partner up or offer them medicine, like if they're sick or something. I'm not talking about instances like that. Or if your partner had insomnia the night before and so therefore they overslept a little bit and you have a flight to catch. I'm not talking about that. I hope that you can feel the difference between doing something for your partner out of love versus doing something for your partner out of control. AKA, it's not actually for your partner. It's actually for you to feel less anxious. So those are different. When you're doing something for your partner, they're going to feel it as an act of love. When you're doing something out of kind of a selfish need to not have anxiety, you're now outsourcing to the other person. You make it their job to make you feel better, and they're going to feel that, and you're going to resent each other and have unrealistic expectations in the relationship. So there is absolutely a beautiful way to live in harmony. And I remember in my Argentine tango class, I used to put way too much weight onto my partner. We are in this very close embrace, and I used to collapse towards my partner's chest and like dump my weight on them. And at some point, my teacher said, don't dance for your partner, dance with your partner. And I think that is what it's really about. It's two people who know how to carry their own weight. They know how to stand on their own 2 feet. I'm not talking about ableism here. You work with what you are able to do. If you're capable of holding your own, you hold it, and then you choose to have an interdependent relationship. You choose to lean on each other consciously, but without the burden of entitlement and constant expectation. So I talked about this a little bit on Patreon, in my last call. If you're not in Patreon, definitely join. The calls are so deep, and we really talk about these things in conversation with one another. There's a difference between feeling deserving of something without feeling entitled to it. Most people I notice in partnership today are operating out of an addiction to some idea of the relationship where their partner's going to save them from things. They're also operating out of a place of entitlement. So can you be deserving of something without entitlement? If you want to hear me talk more about that, I talked about it in my last Patreon call, and I even timestamped it. So if you just want to, look at that one part, I shared a beautiful birthday story, my birthday this year. I shared it on Patreon. I had a whole thing about wanting a birthday gift, and I had to kind of worry that I might not get a birthday gift this year. So if you've ever worried that you're not going to get a birthday gift, I want you to go listen to that story, because I talked about it on Patreon. And it's really about feeling into the deservingness without the entitlement. It is an edge. So if you want to hear about that, check it out on Patreon. Our next call is going to be on October 8th. At 11 a.m. Pacific time or 2 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't be there live, don't worry. It's going to be recorded and uploaded. There's 2 different tiers of Patreon. There's the ALC fam, which is $5 a month. And for that, you can watch any of my calls and all of my terrible relationship advice posts that I get from the internet. You can watch all of those in your own time. If you are in the ALC Super fam for $9 a month or more if you want, that one, you can attend calls live, and I do group coaching in those live calls. So it's a really great group, and I would love for you to join. So that is pretty much it. I also want to let you know that I have a Wizio sale. Actually, it's not my sale. The service that I use is called Wizio, and you can ask me a question if you want a guaranteed response to something you're going through, especially if you listen to this podcast today and you're like, okay, Nat, that sounds great, but I have this one particular situation and I don't know how to handle it. That is great for a Wizio. I don't do private one-on-one coaching in the DMs because, to be honest, it makes me uncomfortable because there's no agreement around it. I don't know how much support you're going to want from me, and I don't really feel total trust in my ability to set boundaries that are appropriate. So Wizio is really nice. It's gonna, I know that I have to cap it at 10 minutes. You can ask me whatever you want. I get paid. It feels good. So this is why I really like Wizio, is because of the structure of it. But they're hosting a sale right now, which means that I get paid the same amount, but you get a discount. So for the next month, you can ask me anything on Wizio. Each Wizio is $67. I'll make a video for you in response to any question of your choice. Use the code FALL, FALL 23, FALL 23 for 10% off at checkout. So you get like $7 off. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll put the link in the show notes. I'll also put the Patreon in the show notes. And also something super random. I am going to be, I just got back to Orange County, California, because Preston's granddad's not doing super well. So we're here to support the family and do some caregiving, and also just support. But we're here, and as soon as I got to Los Angeles or Orange County, I felt kind of depressed. Like, I feel like a lot of interactions here are kind of surface level. Obviously, not completely. I have friends and everything, but I'm just longing for more community. So I am planning on hosting a movement class near here. So if you're in Orange County, I'm thinking about doing just like a mindful movement, almost like a women's circle, but it could be open to anybody. It's not like only women. It's a circle. We'll open up with some intentions. We'll do some mindful movement and breathing in the grass and the shade nearby, and we'll open up for mindful sharing at the end. I would really like this, and I'm planning to just make it donations based, pay what you can. I'll probably cap it at 15 because I'm not going to make it this business thing. This is not a anxious love coach thing. This is I want people to hang out with thing, but I don't want to make it a huge thing because I don't want to draw too much attention and get people being like, do you have a permit? Like, I don't really want to do that. I just want to hang out. And if you want to pay something, you can, but it's, not necessary. So I'm going to cap it at 15. If you're interested, shoot me an email, Natalie at Anxious Love Coach. You will need to RSVP, and I haven't 100% decided how I'm going to do it yet. But if you want to come and you're in Orange County, let me know. We're probably going to do like October 15th at 4 p.m. or something like that. So if you're interested, let me know. And that's it. I'm going to hop off now and hope that you enjoyed my examples of how I am potentially the most controlling person ever and got some inspiration from it. I promise you that when you start giving your partner space to be themselves, the relationship will either get worse or better. And I know a lot of you are afraid of that worse part, but I see it as, it's kind of like when you try to switch to more natural hair care methods, you have to deal with greasy hair for a little while. There's a little adjustment period, but if you can tolerate the anxiety of that period, the results will pay off. So I feel very confident about that. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, head on over to anxiouslovecoach.com. I am taking another client, so you're welcome to apply. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I always appreciate your feedback and appreciate you trusting me and listening to my voice for 45 minutes. It's just amazing and very profound. And I hope that you have a marvelous day. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.